Welcome back to this episode of Who You Will Vote For. My name is Susan Wanjiku. I'm the founder of wanjikuseyeke, and let's get right into it. Now, in my previous video, I gave you the background and history of why we have two levels of government. And the major reasons for having two levels of government under the new Constitution of 2010 is first, so that we can take away certain powers from the president and transfer those powers to other entities. Then the second thing is to bring power as close to the people as possible so that we can have a say in how we want our country to be run. Then the third thing is to make sure that public resources are allocated fairly across the country so that the counties can develop and become competitive. Number 4 is to separate powers across the different arms of government so that we can have checks and balances. Yani, the elected leaders wasifanye tu vile wanataka, and then also for the sake of accountability. And lastly, so that when it comes to making laws, the youth and persons with disabilities can be represented, and then to also make sure that there's a balance in the number of men and women in parliament, and also to ensure that the different ethnic groups in Kenya are represented. But the most important one is so that our constitution is protected because of all the reasons that I mentioned in part 1. But basically, elected leaders have abused the government and Kenyans since independence. Now, let's start with the elective position that gets the most attention, the president. So the presidency comprises of the president and a running mate who becomes the deputy president. And so they come as a package. When you vote for the president, you vote for his running mate also. Now in Kenya, the president is both the head of state and the head of government. And the very bare minimum expected of the president is that he is expected to uphold and respect our constitution and to make sure that our human rights and freedoms in Kenya as Kenyans and for Kenya are protected. And then it's also expected that as he implements and executes his plan, he doesn't interfere or violate your rights in the process. Now, once the president assumes power, he's expected to form his technical team, also called the cabinet. So he nominates and recommends the Attorney General, the Principal Secretaries, the Cabinet Secretaries, and other state officers that the Constitution allows him to appoint. So basically, he chooses the team that he wants to work with, but he doesn't make the final decision. Then, for those who don't know, the Cabinet Secretaries were previously known as ministers, and these guys are the technical guys ideally, so they're professionals in different fields, and they're spread across all sectors of the economy, like finance, health, agriculture and farming, industry and trade, education, water, energy, etc. So the president, his deputy, the attorney generals, and the cabinet secretaries form the branch of government that is called the national executive. So their work is to execute. And what are they executing? So most times it's the promises that they made in the manifesto, of which it's expected that that manifesto is addressing Kenya's needs and challenges, plus any other matters arising within the course of time. So they propose a plan of how they are going to address these challenges and bring that plan to life. So sometimes part of these plans are included in the budget that is read every year, and out of that budget comes some of the most contentious things, taxes. So please note the word here is they propose. Finally, the president also signs bills which become law or laws after they've been approved by parliament, but I won't be discussing lawmaking today. Which brings me to the second guys, the members of parliament or the MPs. And these guys sit in the National Assembly and they represent the constituencies. Now, I believe this is one of the most underrated positions in the government. Remember, the work of the president is to execute, but the work of the MPs is three very important things: oversight of state officers, oversight over our resources as a country, and to make laws. And they form one part of the legislating arm of government, also known as the legislature. So let's start with their role in making laws. Now, when someone, whether the president or the MPs themselves or the senators or you and I, if we propose for a law to be introduced into Kenya, or we want to change an existing law, or for a law to be removed altogether, it has to go through the MPs in the National Assembly. And in a nutshell, the proposed laws normally go through very many checks to figure out very many things. For example, if a law is touching on money, they want to figure out, is that going to affect the current and future budgets? Or if a certain law is introduced in Kenya, how is it going to affect Kenyans? So like if taxes are high or many new ones are introduced, these are the ones to blame, not KRA. However, one thing that's important to note is that they can't make laws that touch on the counties without the approval of the senators, and we'll get there. Then the other role that they play is oversight. And let's start with oversight of people. So one form of this is that when the president nominates the cabinet secretaries that he wants to work with, they have to be vetted by the MPs. And after they approve, that's when they can be appointed officially. Then they also vet other senior government officials like the Chief Justice before they get into office. Then another thing that they do is they hold senior government officials accountable. Like when we had the fuel crisis in April, the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Energy, Petroleum and Mining was called to the National Assembly to explain why is there a shortage of fuel, what's going on, and what's the plan. Then another form of oversight is that if the president is seriously violating the constitution, these are the guys who begin the process to impeach the president. Like if Kenya was a functional democracy, Uhuru would have been impeached by now. Then the third role of the MPs is oversight on our finances and our financial position as a country. So first thing, when it comes to the finances, the MPs decide how much will be given to the counties and how much will be retained by the national government, but in line with the constitution. So it's not just ambiguous or random. The second thing, remember that one of the tools that the president uses to show what he wants to do, how he intends to do it, and how much it will cost is through a budget. Now this budget is read to the MPs, they debate it, and then they decide if they will approve it fully or partially. Then that money can be released. And sometimes they can reject some proposals in that budget. Like if the president proposes to tax, for example, unga, because they don't have enough money to do whatever it is that they need to do, the MPs have the power to approve or refuse, because they'll be like, a majority of Kenyans might not be able to afford food afterwards. Same thing when it comes to the government borrowing money. This can only be done with the approval of the MPs. Then another thing is that they also make sure that our money is being used for the purpose it was intended for. Then finally, for the MPs, they're given some money to work with in their constituencies, and this fund is called the National Government Constituency Development Fund. The reason for this fund is quite ambiguous, and in my opinion, it brings in a conflict of interest because compromising the MPs is as easy as slashing their CDF budgets.
You know, they say, if people are dying of malaria, don't blame the mortuary attendant. Yes, if people are dying of malaria, don't blame the mortuary attendant. Blame yourself, blame the doctor, blame the pharmacist. I have seen people blaming the president. I have seen people blaming the National Treasury. And all these other. Mr. Speaker, the 2010 constitutional architecture gave this august house, the National Assembly, all the powers in as far as budget making process is concerned, in as far as the management of debt, the management of finances of our country. Mr. Speaker, you know, looking at it, basically, I've looked at this report last night. The budget is 3.6 trillion. National Executive is getting 1.89, Parliament is getting 46 billion, Judiciary is getting 17 billion, county governments are getting 370 billion. Look at what we call, and that is where the devil is, consolidated fund services, 1.3 trillion. That 1.3 trillion, 1 trillion is going to service debt. And I want to ask members, when you have free time, read, go back, you can even use the internet, read how countries like Greece, countries that suffered under siege.
Another person you will vote for is the women representatives, also known as the women rep. Now, each county will vote for a woman rep, and the role of the seat is to promote the interests of the women and the girl child within the counties and the country overall. And also their role is to advocate for the rights, freedoms, and interests of girls and come up with strategies through the law to uplift the social, economic, and political status of women and girls in the country. However, it's important to note that the women rep sit in the National Assembly, and so their role is just the same as for the MPs. So they're involved in making the laws in the country regardless of gender, and make sure that our money is being used for the purpose it's intended for, and to also make sure that the president, his deputy, and other state officers are acting accordingly, and to allocate what proportion of our money will go to the national government and what proportion is going to go to the counties. But the defining factor of the women rep position is just that their presence in the National Assembly increases the number of women in Parliament. So just in case not so many women are voted into Parliament. So this is especially so that when laws are being passed or debated, they can do a gender analysis. And this just means that they take into account the differences between men and women when it comes to accessing resources, and then they also figure out the different challenges and limitations that men and women face when compared to each other. So like if they want to introduce a law. Now let's go to the guys who are handling things at county level. Now, the governor is the head of the county and has powers similar to that of a president, but restrained to the county level. So he executes, but in the county. And he's responsible for providing the leadership in the running of the county, plus the development of the county, and to figure out how to make the county more competitive. Now, in the past, the national government was responsible for executing development projects and programs and solving community problems down to the grassroots level. But the main challenge of that was that some areas of Kenya would be left out because, I mean, it's very difficult for just a few people to be tasked with understanding the challenges of the many diverse communities in Kenya and provide solutions for the same, and most importantly, solve it on time. So it might take forever. And the other reasons are political, which I mentioned in my previous video. And because of that, the national government shifted some of that power and responsibility to the county governments to sort out the issues in their communities, because even though there's some things that the national government can do, there are things that the county government is better suited to do. And these are known as devolved functions, and they include street lighting in the county, parking related issues, markets and trade licenses, some services in health like ambulance services, pharmacies, cultural activities, etc. So you'll just look at the link in the description box. But to carry out these responsibilities transferred to the county, a governor nominates people for appointment into a county executive committee. And the procedure here is just similar to the one in the national government. So the governor appoints and the MCAs approve or disapprove. So the county executive committee is like a cabinet, but in a county. So together with the leadership of the governor, they provide the public services in the county and implement the development agenda of the county. And they're normally given funds by the national government to do this. So yeah, they're given cash to do whatever it is that they need to do. Another thing that they can do is to propose certain county laws to be considered by the MCAs. Another person you'll be voting for is the member of county assembly, also known as the MCAs, and they represent a ward. So each county is divided into several wards, and the MCA role is also a very underrated position because their work is to keep the governors of their counties in check and make sure that they don't misbehave. So they're like the MPs of the county. And similarly, the MCAs have roles in lawmaking and oversight at the county level. So for the lawmaking bit, they are responsible for making laws specific to their country. And this position was designed to bring power as close to the mwananchi as possible. So ideally, they should be easy to access. You give them your views and opinions in relation to your ward, and they present this to the county assembly. So when the county governor nominates a team to work with in the county executive committee, the county assembly has to vet them. Then they approve or disapprove. Then they also oversee the county executive committee to approve what they propose as plans to develop the county and to make sure that the funds they're given as a county, that those funds are used properly and used for the purpose they intended for. So if a governor is misbehaving, these are the guys who pass a motion to impeach him on the grounds of either gross misconduct, gross violation of the constitution, or other reasons. Then it's passed over to the senators for them to now do their investigations. So another very important role that they play is when it comes to protecting or changing the constitution, especially when it's an initiative of the citizens, but I won't get into that because it can get a bit complicated. I want to finish with the senators because, for lack of a better word, they are an intermediary between the national government and the county government in their functions. So they form part of parliament and they sit in the Senate. Remember that parliament has two houses, which is the National Assembly where the MPs sit, then the other house is the Senate where the senators sit. So both houses form the arm of government called the legislature. So for the senators, I'll just touch on the main things, but basically they make laws once again, oversight on state officers and oversight on public resources. So first thing is the senators are lawmakers, but they are mainly there to represent their counties and to make sure the interests of their individual counties and the county governments collectively are protected. So if the MPs want to make a law that touches on the powers, the functions, and the finances of the counties, the Senate has to consider it. And also, even if the senators want to make a law regarding the counties, the MPs still have to deliberate on it before it becomes a law. Then they also play a role in the overseeing how money given to the counties is spent. Plus, they also determine how much each county should get based on the development needs of the counties, sometimes population size, economic differences between counties, etc. So So each county isn't given the same amount of cash, but the cash that's allocated to the county government, it's the work of the senators to decide who gets what. Third thing, they play an oversight role of state officers. So if the MPs move a motion to and propose to impeach either the president or the deputy president, the senators have to consider it, investigate it, and come to a conclusion as to whether we should proceed with the impeachment or not impeach. Same thing for the counties. If a majority of the MCAs for a particular county find a reason and agree to impeach a governor, it's passed over to the Senate for them to investigate. So, in a nutshell, the executive is the proposer and the executor, and the legislature is the approver and overseer to make sure that the executive does what they said they'll do with the money that they've been given, especially. And I know a lot of attention is given to the president, but I believe you should shift that attention to the MPs, senators, and MCAs. Because if you just happen to land yourselves a rogue president, you can survive him without doing too much damage to the economy if your parliament is independent and has integrity. So I see a lot of blame game on who should be blamed for getting us here as a country. So for example, like in Kenya, so who do you blame when Kenya is heavily in debt? It's twofold. You blame the president for having the audacity of the recommendation, but you blame the MPs mostly for letting it happen under their watch. Same to the mini taxes, blame the MPs, but once again, the president for having the audacity. So I'm giving you some homework. Go find out about the other candidates vying in the area that you'll be voting from. And another thing is, I understand the need for representation in this country, but the size of government is very big. So I believe we'll be electing about 290 MPs, 47 senators, 47 governors, 47 women reps, and about 1450 MCAs. Those are very many people. Finally, an election is one event in 5 years, but there are many other opportunities for you to engage with your leaders within the course of those 5 years. But guys, voting is literally the bare minimum that you can do for your country. However, in my next video, I will tell you why you won't vote. Yeah, you heard me right. We'll talk about why some of you will not vote, and I know that many of you don't intend to vote, so make sure you don't miss that one. And at the end of the day, remember that you are the real Mheshimiwa, na Kenya ni yetu sisi wote. We all have a responsibility to our country. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you learned something, make sure you leave a comment down below. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.